If you have Ehlers-Danlos and you lift weights, then you've probably had an experience where you've had to go back and relearn something from scratch. Maybe you got great at deadlifts, then something started hurting and you had to go back and relearn from scratch. Or maybe squats are your nemesis and you keep having this thing where you get good and then you get knocked back, then you get good and then you get knocked back, and you keep having to go back to square one. In this video, I want to explain to you why this is not the end of your lifting career. You can come back stronger, and these ups and downs, while incredibly frustrating, are not a sign that it's over for you, but rather are just a natural part of the Ehlers-Danlos lifting journey. To explain this, I'm going to use my squat. So if you didn't know this already, I used to be a competitive powerlifter. I was pretty good. This is my best squat ever, which is 185 kilos, which is just over 400 pounds. This was to achieve my best total, 500 kilos or 1,100 pounds. Now, when I say it wasn't smooth sailing to get up to this point, that is no exaggeration. Allow me to let you in on the journey that led me here. Strap in, it's a bumpy ride. So in this clip, I'm aged 17 and I was squatting 127.5 kilos. That's about 280 pounds. And at this stage, I had been lifting weights for about 4 years. So a year after that video, I moved interstate and started competing in powerlifting. And then about a year into that, I got this knee injury. We believe it was a torn meniscus, and I had to take about 6 months off squatting or any lower body exercises. Once I came out of these 6 months off lower body stuff, I had to basically relearn how to squat. I had to change my technique, change the muscles involved, and put in so much work. This was the first comp that I did coming back after those 6 months off. This was the Commonwealth Championships where I represented Australia. Squatting 120 kilos here, which was about 15 kilos off my best, but not bad considering I'd only had a couple of weeks to train for this. Now, this comp is about a year and a half later, and in this time, things went relatively well. My knee surgeon had suggested that I switch to a federation that allows these knee wraps. They do allow you to squat more, but they also give a bit more compression to the knee. And here I am squatting 165 kilos to win first place and $7,000 prize money. That's about 360 pounds, and fun fact, my ankle actually subluxed halfway through that lift. Now, it was after this competition that things went really bad for my powerlifting. I had this knee pain that started to get unbearable, even with a bodyweight squat, and it was the kind of pain where it switches off all your muscles. So I'd be doing a bodyweight squat, I'd squat down, I'd get to the bottom, and then my muscles had turned off and I would have to use my hands to help me stand back up. I firmly believe this was a consequence of my Ehlers-Danlos, not a consequence of powerlifting, but it was stopping me from being able to do my powerlifting. At this point, I remember I just turned 21 and I was actually thinking that I had no choice other than to quit powerlifting. And it was my job. I was a powerlifting coach. All my friends were powerlifters. I owned a gym, a powerlifting gym. So to think that I was having to quit was a really scary thought. I was basically willing to try anything, invasive or non-invasive, and then I discovered this incredible physio, Andrew Locke, who really changed my life. Andrew passed away recently, but his legacy still lives on for literally generations. Andrew was the person who taught me a lot of what I know about strength-based rehab. He taught me how to train the muscles that needed retraining, and we basically went in, got my squat, stripped it back to nothing, and relearned to squat from scratch. So I went from squatting 165 kilos as a national champion to just squatting the bar again. So that last squat I showed you was in 2014, and my best squat was in 2017. And over these years, there were lots of ups and downs and multiple times where I had to strip back and relearn how to squat from scratch. And you better believe that each time I had to do that, it felt like I was really starting from scratch. What I've realized over the years is, firstly, just because you have to go back to square one does not mean that you can never get ahead. Secondly, it's not actually square one. There's this saying, you can never step in the same river twice, and it's very much applicable here. Every single setback that you go through, you learn so much about your body. You learn so much about the principles that help you to overcome that setback. You were never truly going back to square one. Each time I went back to an empty barbell and relearned how to squat, I was doing it with so much more knowledge, building from the last time that I had to do that. It also taught me to resist the temptation to get very upset when I have one of these setbacks. Because truthfully, what ends up happening is I end up coming back to where I was and then exceeding it. Now, since that 185 kilo squat, my best ever squat, I actually then went back down to square one again and then relearned how to squat, redid my squat pattern and came back to compete again. I didn't squat as much. I squatted around 165 kilos, but I'm still really proud of that and still really impressed that I was able to come back and do that. These fluctuations are part of Ehlers-Danlos, and they actually make us incredible lifters because of the amount of stuff that we learn each time we go through it. So if you're experiencing this currently, please don't despair. You are not going back to square one. You cannot step in the same river twice, and you are going on an incredible learning journey that is going to teach you so much about your body and about training in general.